Welcome to the Human Reboot with me, Emma Last. We have uplifting, inspiring, and diverse reboot stories from people sharing the courageous, honest, authentic, and sometimes difficult life lessons. The Human Reboot will provide proven mentally flourishing formulas and practical tips to help you to live life to the full, giving you direction and hope. Make your mental fitness and well-being a daily priority. Learn to pause so that you can get clear and perform at your best. Switch off to switch on. It's time for your Human Reboot. So in today's Human Reboot podcast, we have the very lovely Becky Holmes. Becky is a confidence on camera coach. She helps people to become more visible in their business and helps them with the tech side of things, but also to become more confident on camera. She's done this for a couple of years, but prior to that, she is a professional speaker and has done a number of science shows around the UK. So myself and Becky met, when did we meet? In 2019 at some point. And we actually met in real life in 2020 before the world went mad. Yeah, she's a great connection to have. And she's helped me to become more confident on camera, because until that point, I even hated having my photo taken, never mind getting myself onto video. So I can't wait for today's discussion. So Becky, please would you share with us how you use rebooting in your life's journey to perform at your best?
Yeah, okay. So to set the context, I'm going to just talk about kind of like two different ways that I have rebooted in my life. So I'll start with the trickier one. I actually have a condition called Premenstrual Dysphoric Disorder, and it's linked to my cycles. So essentially every month just before my period, I will be really quite ill. So I will have to reboot kind of cyclical once a month, because once I get out of that feeling really unwell, then I have to get my life back on track. It's taken me, so I've had this condition since I was a teenager, but more serious in the last couple of years. And so the learning to slow down and accept it has been a massive part of my journey to just keep going through life. So yeah, and I work completely around it. I'm still a fully functioning human being, but I do have to go through the reboot and all the techniques that you teach almost on a monthly basis. And then the other place I've had to reboot is just after massive periods of stress in my old workplace. And there was just like a case of bullying, shall we say, and just coming back from that as well. So just that's the two parts in my story where really kind of like resting to come back is really important, but I've had to do it more than others because it's a monthly thing.
So for many women, we have a cycle each month. Why is it that your symptoms are so much kind of worse than what we would class as normal, let's say?
So PMDD is, they don't have all the answers yet. So it's 1 in 20 women experience it. In my belief, lots of people would have it and just not really realize. So they say that where they're at the moment with their research is that it's my brain. So there's nothing wrong with my hormones. If I have blood tests all the time, they check me out and I'm always the picture of health on paper. But I think my brain reacts differently to the fluctuation of hormones. So throughout the month, progesterone, the estrogen fluctuates, and my brain just cannot cope with those changes. So and the way you diagnose it at the moment, like I said, there's no blood test because my blood show I'm healthy. You just mark out your moods versus where you are like days of your cycle, and you'll start to see a pattern. So yeah, it's also called severe PMS, not a name I like for it because it's so much worse than PMT or PMS that I don't like to lump them together. So I'm literally dysphoric. I'm not really not myself for that week, so I don't like to mix the names up. But yeah, essentially the brain is reacting differently than your brain when my hormones fluctuate, which means I'm also like, I react badly to birth control pills, alcohol, caffeine, like, and different women with PMDD will experience it differently. Another typical symptom that I never get is rage, like intense rage. I'd get it when I was younger. I'd run away from home. I'd want to leave my husband. I think I cut the TV cables plugs off at one point. But as I'm older, I don't experience the rage. But it's a spectrum. Different women react differently and to differing levels. And I like to think that all the work I do around mental health techniques and my awareness as I've grown older helps with that as well.
So if someone kind of looking outside in and seeing you, you are a real kind of energetic, extrovert, outgoing bundle of fun. But when you're kind of going through that part of the month, you're literally the opposite to that, aren't you? It's like you just have so little energy and are quite low, really.
Definitely the energy and the fatigue. So I would definitely just probably don't operate the whole day. Like 6 o'clock, I'm absolutely done. And on some of the days I won't get out of bed. So there's a massive fatigue, but also the mental. So it is like low. I use the word like despondent. So I just suddenly feel like life's not worth it, that I should probably quit my job, give up what I'm doing. Like every month, these feelings come. Obviously now I'm much more aware of them, and I'm just like, right, just ride it out 4 days. You'll be back. So yeah, it is a massive polarity to my normal personality, but I cannot, there's no point fighting it. When I was younger, I would try to fight it, but now there's no point. It's just like, just let it be for 4 days and know that this soon will pass and you will come to the other side. And then on top of the lowness, there's so what I call the dysphoric element of it is that I won't want to verbalize my words. So it's like a real apathy. So I might see you in the street and my usual personality will be like, oh my God, Emma, I love your hair. And if I'm in a bad patch, my brain will go, oh, Emma's hair looks lovely. But the apathy and the words, they won't come, which is again in absolute opposite. I'm a chatter, I'm a talker. So yeah, so it's just something happens in my body. It's like it just shut down. It's tired. It's not very happy, but physical stuff as well, like the apathy to the speaking and stuff. So yeah, it's not fun, Emma. It's not fun.
Oh, so if anybody else thinks that sounds like them, how do they get some support and help like you have?
So the way I distinguish it from depression, and because you could diagnose yourself with depression or anxiety, but the difference for me is that there'll be one day, it's usually about 2 days before I start to bleed, and I will just suddenly wake up and it's like, I'm like, I can hear the birds tweeting and the water rippling, and I just feel myself again. So that if they recognize kind of themselves in it, it will be that they have periods of depression, but that do suddenly end and then suddenly come, or periods of rage or periods of anxiety or periods of just not feeling themselves. So that would be the kind of, if you've got that, would be to track it. There are excellent resources on IAMPD. That's like a charitable website. There's tons of resources tracking things. And then speak to your GP. And I just think, even if you're listening and you've not got this condition, just be really aware of it. If you've got friends that suddenly get really down at the same time each month, or you've got children and they're really struggling for parts of the month, just be aware of it. And just, if people are having mental health issues, especially in women, could it be related to their hormones? So just have an awareness of it. Yeah, and that website is IAMPD.
Brilliant. Thank you, Becky. That's so useful. So tell me a little bit about, how do you manage your month then, with regards to, your illness?
In all honesty, just to set the scene, I am undergoing treatment at the moment. So since the beginning of lockdown, I don't have cycles. So I'm much less up and down at the moment. So the tracking and the awareness is really important to me. So I know my body really well at this point because of tracking it for a couple of years. Even though at the beginning I'd have the bad patches and wouldn't remember that I even tracked until I came back to my normal self and be like, oh, better mark that down. But as it's gone on and on, so just the really, really awareness of what the different days of the month are likely to make me feel, what triggers me as well. So during ovulation, I would be quite fragile. So say we had a little argument, Emma.
Yeah.
If it was any part of the month, I'd deal with it really well. I'd know that I needed to speak to you and clear the air, and it would all be fine. So like any stress I would deal with really well. But if it was over ovulation, it would be a massive trigger. I'd be hyperventilating, crying, overreacting. You probably wouldn't see it because it's like you do it behind closed doors, and then I'd collect myself, but I'd need to deal with it really fast. It would be like it was the end of the world and Emma doesn't like me, and that kind of like everything is really heightened. But I know what my triggers are. So I know that if I feel like somebody's not treating me fairly, or if I've been misheard, or I feel like there's too much expectations of me. So I just know my husband is just a trigger, just breathing, being present. But I know those things, so I can be like, oh, it's one of those, Becky, just like step back, don't send the email, don't do anything, just wait for a little bit. So awareness of the days of the month, awareness of what triggers of me, awareness of what makes me feel better. So I am massively into self-care and doing what brings me joy. But there's kind of two levels for self-care for me. There's self-care of like when I'm feeling great, I need joy, adventure. So I supboard, I swim in the water. I'm going to a dance class in a minute. So I know I need to be moving my body, be outside, what gives me joy. Then I also need self-care for when I don't want to leave my room and literally can't get out of bed. So that's different self-care. So that would be like, can you get yourself to the bath, Becky? Could you make yourself a cup of tea, Becky? I have a WhatsApp group with my family so that I can reach out to them and say, I'm not very well, just letting you know in case it ever got where I need somebody to be checking up on me, essentially. But they don't even need to do that much. I just know they're there, and they'll all say, it's 4 days, Becky, you've got this, you've done it before, you can do it again. But that kind of like open communication line is really, really important to me as well, because I don't want to communicate with anybody, essentially. So I kind of like that's just a pattern I'm in to reach out, because it's tempting not to bother and to retreat even further. So yeah, so awareness of what makes me feel good when I'm feeling good, a different special pot of things that make me feel good when I'm at my lowest ebb, and then this communication, because they can also remind me, and you're probably on that list these days, Emma. I'd message you and just say like, I'm not feeling good, and you'd be like, oh, well, just take care of yourself, Becky. And yeah, taking care of myself looks very different at certain times of the month than it does at other times of the month, because in a good time I probably need to go out, see everybody, obviously lockdown allowing, just be around people. But it's different when I'm not feeling well, and I can't judge myself by not being able to do those things, because it just spirals. Then you can't even do the things you love. What's the point? Down.
It's just being kind of just working with it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And well, we've had many conversations while you've been in the bath, Becky.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, water is definitely so it's a lake or sea if I'm feeling good. But yeah, even when I had this and I didn't realize, I would always, so when I had my son, I was scared of him. So he was about 7 months old. He was the perfect baby. He slept all the time, but I would be terrified of him waking up, because then I had to be this mother. It was completely irrational at the time. But what we would do is we'd get in the bath together, because then I would feel happy. He's happy because he's in the bath. And it was I just knew that would be okay if I could get in the bath or near water or things like that.
So, just talk to me a little bit more about how you pause to perform at your best in your work or home life. So, how do you switch off to switch on?
So, I'll tell you about the times when I didn't switch off to switch on. When I was younger and I had this, I felt like I would just fight it. So I would just carry on, do everything I would. And then the more I did, so stress makes it worse. I just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And then every 6 months, I'd completely fall off the planet and would need to like really regroup. So it was just about learning that it is okay to rest, and that I'm not a bad person. Because there's a lot of I think I judge myself really hard, because when you are not a high achiever, but I talk on stages to 300 people. I would tour, I would do school in the morning, school in the afternoon, and I would then travel abroad. You know what I mean? So I held myself at this level. So when I could no longer do that, I'd push too hard. And then I'd mentally beat myself up for not achieving those things. But yeah, now I know completely that I still get very frustrated, but I know that I just have to rest. It's just part of me. My body needs to rest and like replenish itself every month, and not to fight it. So yeah, so on the really bad 4 days, I know that it is okay. If all I can do is watch Netflix, that's fine.
Yeah, and I think, well, you plan like your launches, you plan your business, you plan your work, and you do that and almost exclude those 4 or 5 days a month out of your calendar, don't you?
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely try, where obviously it's not as bad now, but I still do avoid. There's still a tiny 4 day where I'm not feeling great. Nothing like it used to be. But yeah, I was completely having to put my schedule around those days. But mainly I knew I could do something, because I can always do something if somebody needs it. But it was like it's not the best for me. So I was going to travel like an hour and a half to do a science show, and I could bring it. I could bring the performance even at my lowest, but then I'd get in the car afterwards and I was having to sleep in the car park to get the energy to drive home. And it just, yeah, but I don't push myself anymore. I'm just like, this is how it is. Just accept it and rest. And if I have stress now, like my son got in a fight yesterday, which I dealt with very well, but just that I think it's the cortisol in me. I'm probably allergic to that as well, like the change in cortisol. So it's just like, right, you need to rest now, Becky. You need to check you've drank enough water, have a cup of tea. Just it's okay to go slower right this second, and just to really accept that things will come to me, but they are going to come slower than they might. Like, it's easy to compare with people, especially in business, who are like absolutely killing it, and it's like, no, because I can't bring that. I can't bring that, and that is okay. It is okay to go at my pace. Permission to rest was what I wasn't giving myself. And now I'm very good. I take every Friday out to go swimming in the sea and meet friends and connect with people. I don't think I'll ever work a full-time job again, because it's too exhausting for me with everything
Yeah.
else. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, do you have any tips that help you live life to the full? So, your personal flourishing formula for life that could help people with their mental fitness, well-being, or sort of key learns. Is there anything that you could share to help our audience?
Yeah. So obviously everything I said about self-care, have your list of self-care that you can do in a tricky situation, and self-care when you're feeling great, because I'm a massive believer, if you're not doing those things that you secretly want to be doing, it's really frustrating. And then the other main one for me is connection and communication. So I've always been very open about how I'm feeling. I am really lucky. I haven't experienced much stigma of people like well, if they've disregarded me, I don't know about it. But in my workplace, I was very, very open about it. I would communicate with my boss. I would communicate with my staff. Like, I'm not feeling very well today, and just be very honest. And the more honest I am about it, that also has a ripple effect, that some people will then recognize it in themselves and will seek help. So usually whenever I talk openly about it, so obviously I'm doing a podcast, I do interviews and things like that, one person at least will say, oh, I saw myself in that and I went to seek help, which is amazing. But also, like, I discovered my next door neighbor has the same condition, but only because I was open about, oh, can you have my kids because I'm going to the doctors, and then didn't hold back the reason. And then she just said, oh, I'm doing that as well. And I was like, never. And it turns out that was at the beginning of lockdowns, that my next door neighbour was going through exactly the same thing. But because people don't speak about it, you just don't know who is doing it. So being very open about how you feel. So obviously I'm talking about this condition, but if you say you've got depression out loud, lots of people will go, oh, me too, me too, me too, me too. And people can just look out for you. And I don't just take because I'm a giver as well, but I'm very open to help when I need it. I'm not like, oh no, Emma, don't worry about calling me. I'm like, oh, actually, Emma, yes, that would be lovely if you called me. Or my other friend, that would be lovely if you would take my child to school for me today. Like, because I know people can keep help at arm's length. It's like, no, I'm fine, and I am fine. I could do it all myself, but I deserve help. I can have help from other people, and I give help. I make sure that that's a two-way street. So yeah, sorry, that was loads of things, wasn't it? But being open with your communication, accepting help, and just community. I have loads of great communities around me that I've cultivated where I'm very, very honest. So they get all of the Becky, and then they will in return look out for me.
And you're so right about people learning from your explanations around your illness, because we did a bit of an impromptu video last year, didn't we?
I think it was Mental Health Awareness Day, wasn't it? We just jumped on an interview.
Yeah, and literally within about half an hour of doing the video, I'd had a message saying, I think I've got that. Thank you so much for, bringing Becky on, because I think that's me, and I'm going to go and get checked out. And, that was one of my clients. So that was amazing.
That's very common, that it will be one person will reach out to me, or the person who's hosted. And I don't even talk about it that much, because obviously it's boring. but where it helps today, like your topic of mental health, but it's very common. So the more you speak about it, the more, but that can help you as well. So it helps that person, but it also helps the person sharing, because they know they're not alone. I think with when you're experiencing things that are not common, it can feel like you're very alone and lonely, and you're different.
But 1 in 20 is quite a lot.
Quite a lot, isn't it?
And we're not aware of it, really, are we? So it's
No.
like people could be going through, have gone through whole of their life, and 4 days before the period be wanting to smack walls or whatever.
Or be smacking walls.
Yeah.
I often, when you see celebrities having I often think, oh, I wonder. So it's often confused with bipolar as well. But obviously bipolar has, I'm waving my hands about, you can't see that on the podcast. But bipolar, you have much longer periods of up and much longer periods of down. But the two can get confused. So yeah.
Yeah, I did think that when you were explaining some of the symptoms before, but I think it's not a prolonged period of depression, is it? It's a short period of depression. And
because I don't think I have it as bad as some women. Some women, it'd be the entire luteal phase. So from ovulation to bleed, they'd be completely out of it. So that could be 14 days. But mine is very neat, literally 4 days. And I'm a scientist, and I find it crazy that my body will just turn off for 4 days, and then bright as a button, 4 days later, boonk, right back again. It's just crazy to me. But something.
Yeah, but you're not. But the difference between bipolar is that someone could be in hypermania stage or move into mania following a period of depression, or vice versa. Whereas that's not what happened. Is you come back to a normal state, don't you? So.
Yeah, I often wonder though, like, so when you look at getting treatment, we're going off topic now, but I often do wonder, I am very happy. Like, is some of it a real high? Do you know what I mean? So would I, if I stopped having any hormone cycles at all, would I miss some of the highs as well as some of the lows? Like that day I described, where you wake up and you're like, oh my God, everything's beautiful again, the birds are singing. Like, would that still be there if I was a much more even keel of a person? So that's another piece of work I've done as well. And much recently with the lovely Jenny Gordon, it's just like accepting the things that having these time frames of feeling rough give me. They are a gift, because I'm a much more empathetic person. I'm much more understanding of what other people are going through. Do you know what I mean? So it has given me gifts as well.
Yeah.
Because I would be a different person if I didn't have it. So it's accepting that as well, instead of putting it like there's one Becky and that horrible bit about Becky. It's like, no, it is all me, and to embrace that.
Fabulous. So that's really definitely taking it from something that's been a real challenge to something that's a gift. Amazing. So is there anyone, any community, anything, or any books or podcasts that, that you feel have been a real key part of your journey that you might want to share with the audience?
Oh, you've put me on the spot there. So IAMPD is brilliant about the medical condition. Obviously, I am a much bigger person than just the medical condition. So I studied loads. I love personal development, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I
Yeah.
just dabble in everything.
Yeah, great. And was there a Facebook group for PMDD?
Yes, so there's several. I am involved in one which is PMDD Pod Wales. So that's for well, it's not just for people in Wales, but lots of us are based in Wales. So yeah, come and find us there. PMDD Pod Wales. Yes, there are lots of Facebook groups for it, but they just have to be very careful, because if you imagine there's lots of very angry women in there, thousands of, they can get quite hectic.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So just be careful, with the support that you're reaching out for.
Yeah. So then that's about surrounding yourself with your people as opposed to other people who are in pain.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it has been lovely to connect with you again, my lovely friend. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, Becky, how's the best way for them to do that?
Yep, so I'm on nearly every platform as Becky Holmes, always talking about video as opposed to mental health. But yeah, you can always pop me a message if you wanted to talk about mental health on my public profiles. So yeah, so Becky Holmes, that's on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Yeah, come find me, come say hi.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for talking about your illness in today's podcast. I'm sure it has been really helpful to our audience. And yeah, it's been great sharing some time with you. I know we can talk for England, the two of us. And I am fortunate enough that Becky is part of my Connect and Co-work community. So I get to see her pretty much every Monday where we co-work together. So if you do fancy joining us or getting to know Becky in more detail, you can connect with her there as well. Thank you so much, Becky.
No worries. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Human Reboot podcast. I'm Emma Last, and if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a 5-star podcast review and visit thehumanrebootmovement.com, where you can find downloadable free resources, sign up to my mailing list, or connect with me on social. So that's thehumanrebootmovement.com. Let's switch off so we can switch on. It's time for your human reboot.